On January 20th, 2003, professional wrestler Raven was released by the WWE from their official roster. It was the second time he'd been released by the WWE and the fourth by a major wrestling promotion within the past decade, erratic numbers even within the industry. A 39-time WWE Hardcore Champion, the move was a shock to both industry workers and fans. Raven, by all means, was a proven commodity for the promotion, having been billed for a triple threat match alongside superstars Kane and Big Show at 2001's WrestleMania 17, two of the biggest wrestlers of that era. With the WWE having now cannibalized its biggest competitor, WCW, in 2001, the only place Raven could now perform were the independent promotions where, surely, the details of his release would come to light. And it would, just not in any formal capacity. The show is Wrestle Rave 2003 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, hosted by Ring of Honor, a then fledgling indie wrestling promotion acquiring both new and established talent in an effort to establish its brand. The tag team event that night was Raven and Christopher Daniels versus CM Punk and Colt Cabana, also known as the Second City Saints. Because of Ring of Honor's infancy, footage of this match isn't publicly available, currently only existing in the imaginations of the audience that night. However, what does remain is the promo recorded after Punk and Cabana's victory, which serves not only as the beginning of Punk and Ravens' rivalry, but the first account of Ravens' release and his backstage relationships with the roster. Punk's forehead is lacerated, staining his bleached hair. A cameraman follows him and Cabana down a flight of stairs until Punk notices. Catching his breath, Punk turns to the camera, and an outburst of repressed emotion unfolds, sending a direct message to his adversary.
And before you cut me off, Raven, the reason I hate you, the reason in my heart of hearts why I hate you is because I didn't know any better when I was a little kid. When my dad came home smelling like beer, I thought it was a hard day's work he was doing. I didn't realize he was out at the bar. I didn't realize work meant unemployment office. I didn't think it was strange for somebody to come home from work and have to take an old style up into the shower while they showered. I didn't think it was strange for somebody to pass out. I thought an old style, a pack a day, was the norm.
Then, Punk sets the stakes.
Raven, my father is exactly like you. And since day one in Ring of Honor, where fighting spirit is supposed to be revered, things aren't supposed to be this way. I'd shake your hand like a normal man, but see, the truth is I don't respect you. I hate you. I hate you for everything you've pissed away, everything I scrape and I claw for that I haven't even earned yet, that you got handed to you, and you flushed down a toilet. For what? For pills? For booze? For alcohol? For women? I am born of your poison society, so on the 17th of July, I will become a monster to fight the monsters of the world. And your time in Ring of Honor will be done. And that is a promise, because this is true. This is real. This is straight edge.
In less than 2 minutes, Punk illustrates not only what separates him from Raven, but alludes to the causes behind Raven's major circuit releases. Punk alleges Raven has drug, alcohol, and womanizing issues which led to his release, how he was given opportunity after opportunity to succeed in the major circuits and squandered it. At the same time, Punk weaves his personal history into the stakes. What Raven considers high life is what Punk sees as substance abuse, a class condition of a broader systemic issue within his hometown of Chicago, which Punk is a product of. Raven is not just a reminder of Punk's precarious upbringing, he is emblematic of a class division between the two and an affront to Ring of Honor as an institution which Punk seeks to rectify. What we're witnessing is the central tension of what the professional wrestling industry calls kayfabe, the interweaving of professional wrestling's fictional, predetermined universe and the professional wrestler's authentic, non-fictional biography. Remember, in 2003, this would have been the first time the average wrestling fan was hearing these allegations against Raven, his locker room instability and substance issues, which Raven would corroborate by his own admission later in his career. The difficulty in parsing fiction from reality isn't an oversight of kayfabe. It's half the point. Obfuscating professional wrestling's predetermined storylines with biographical elements adds a dimension of realness that serves as the main hook. The dismissal of professional wrestling as fake is problematic when epistemology is interwoven into the medium. As professional wrestler John Moxley writes in his memoir Mox, I can call wrestling fake, you can't. The core question regarding professional wrestling shouldn't be, is professional wrestling fake? Rather, how real is professional wrestling? Professional wrestling is unique in the genre of theater in that performance is cultural perspective, so let's start by analyzing this promo through a sociological lens before folding it back into a literary analysis. For every WWE superstar plastered on the juice carton, there's an invariable amount of professional wrestlers who go unnoticed in the indie promotions. The career of the average professional wrestler is tenuous and financially unsteady, many of whom go unpaid for every match performed. Income isn't guaranteed for most professional wrestlers. Indie promotions barely earn enough revenue to cover their expenses, meaning travel expenses between shows and promotions, gas, hotels, toiletries, often fall on the professional wrestlers themselves. On February 6, 2026, during intermission at Oasis Pro Wrestling's New Era event, professional wrestlers Mia Sweets and Jordan Oasis had taken the liberty to run their own merchandise stands. They sold buttons, patches, and autographed portraits. Both wrestlers took photos with fans for free in order to attract business. To be an indie wrestler, especially those pursuing stardom in the eye of major promotions, is to be your own advocate and business person. Marketing, merchandise design and shipping, solicitation, nutrition, booking, social media engagement, branding, weight training, wrestling practice, and communications fall squarely onto the individual wrestlers, most of whom already work full time jobs to cover their basic needs. While the outcomes of professional wrestling matches and storylines are predetermined, the competition for roster spots and public exposure is as real as it is limited. Surprisingly, at least in the indie promotions, professional wrestlers see this financial instability as a means to build class solidarity among each other rather than letting resentments brew. As R. Tyson Smith, author of Fighting for Recognition, Identity, Masculinity, and the Act of Violence in Professional Wrestling, observes, quote, nonetheless, indie wrestlers take a certain pride in remaining distinct from the almighty WWE and prize the indies as a more authentic, non corporate production. End quote. The appeal of indie wrestling is in its otherness. Many wrestlers who are released from a major promotion's developmental program will eventually return to the indies with more creative liberties than had they stayed signed to said promotions. The gritty aesthetics and personas that a major promotion will sanitize in the corporatization and industrialization of their wrestlers is the heart and soul of the independent sphere. Indie wrestlers celebrate each other's successes, however big or small, bound by their passion for the cutthroat business that is professional wrestling. So, when Punk tells Raven in his promo that he hates him for everything he's, quote, pissed away, this, the class immobilities embedded within the professional wrestling industry, is what he's referring to. Again, Raven wasn't a developmental experiment gone wrong, but a genuine WWE superstar with pay per view headliners and action figures to his likeness. For every part of the business the average indie wrestler is expected to carry on their own, Raven had a designated professional team for. While indie wrestlers find camaraderie in being aesthetical misfits rejected by major promotions, they paradoxically also want to be signed to one, in part because of the various benefits and guaranteed income that a major promotion provides. And it's this immobility, this squandering of a career many of Ravens' peers can only dream of, that Punk folds back into kayfabe. It's not only disrespectful to Punk, it's downright irreconcilable to anyone reaching for wrestling stardom to see a peer lose their chance. By all means, Raven shouldn't be in Ring of Honor for the mainstream success he's already had. By all means, Punk shouldn't be in Ring of Honor, the Indies, for the incongruity he sees and articulates so clearly. CM Punk was born Philip Jack Brooks in Chicago, 1978, to an emotionally neglectful mother and an alcoholic father. To this day, he keeps so private in his personal life that he only gives interviews under the moniker, not his government name, as if to suggest that the character CM Punk speaks on Brooks's behalf. However, in 2012, the WWE released CM Punk Best in the World, a documentary chronicling the wrestler's journey into stardom. In it, we see a rare glimpse into Brooks, the social inequities and neglect he survived as a child. Candidly, Brooks says, quote,
The stuff with my dad having problems with alcohol was 100% real. You know, like he never beat me or my mom or like anything like that. But I just would always be like, well, man, he looks like he's miserable right now. Why would you do that to yourself? Like it doesn't just doesn't look like fun. It's pretty heavy stuff. But I remember one time, and this is it. This is real life. You know, I remember one time my dad like being like extremely late to pick me up for like Little League. And he picked me up in his work van. He's an electrician, and you know, I remember like driving home and like he's throwing up like the whole time. He's just like driving and just like yeah. And I was a kid and like I didn't know anything about anything. I was just like holy crap. I just remember getting on my bike when I got home and like riding away, just like in tears, just like please don't let it be cancer. Please don't let it
quote,
be cancer. You know.
as if the lines between reality and fiction weren't already blurry enough with Raven, Brooks's personal history and later refuge in Chicago's straight-edge punk circles would become the foundation of the CM Punk character. And it's in this history that builds tension between the two wrestlers within kayfabe. Is it Brooks or Punk speaking to Raven? And whoever is the one speaking, are they addressing Raven or the man behind the persona, Scott Levy? The answer is, it's a simultaneity both ways. The wrestler is inseparable from the character in which they are embodying, and vice versa. What the wrestler does is take personal biography, cultural epistemologies, or the socio-political conditions of their occupation and hyper exaggerates them until they become fictitious. That's the spectacle here, the anchor of the narrative. As Sharon Mazer writes in her collection of essays, Professional Wrestling, Sport and Spectacle, quote, professional wrestling explicitly and implicitly makes visible cultural and countercultural ideas of masculinity and sexuality. Wrestling's apparently conservative masculine ideal is constantly undermined by its opposite. Professional wrestling's often vehement heterosexism is thus underscored by the homoerotic. What men do in the ring is touch each other in ways that are only superficially violent. On the surface, what is performed, what an audience sees, is a range of masculine identities in which the virtuous man can be recognized by the way in which he plays by the rules and courts the audience's approval, and victory always equals masculinity. End quote. Kayfabe is both a representation of and an implicit dialogue between cultural ideals, their values and status. Professional wrestlers are ideologues of nationality, race, gender, and subculture. Additionally, a wrestling promotion's roster, who it chooses to appoint as the champion of the company, is an institutional commentary of the political moment made by the wrestling promotion and what the promotion's stances within that moment are. Contrary to how professional wrestling may occupy the minds of non wrestling fans, a wrestling promotion's roster is a perpetually diversifying cast of identities in order to enrich its storylines and broaden audience reach through representation. A professional wrestling event, then, is more than just oiled up buff people fighting in homoerotic ways. It's a debate told through theatrical, consensual violence about what gets to become national ethos. Punk takes all the aforementioned dimensions of this promo biography, class, disparities, subcultural identity and turns it into a declarative statement within the narrative. He becomes not just an ideologue, but a symbol for the audience to emotionally attach themselves to. And this is where the working class appeal of professional wrestling begins to surface. In his far seeing essay, The World of Wrestling, Roland Barthes makes the connections between professional wrestlers and the devotion of their fans. Quote, the inertia of the vanquished allows the temporary victor to settle in his cruelty and to convey to the public this terrifying slowness of the torturer who is certain about the outcome of his actions. To grind one's face of one's powerless adversary, or to scrape his spine with one's fists with a deep or regular movement, or at least to produce the superficial appearance of such gestures, wrestling is the only sport which gives such an externalized image of torture. But here again, only the image is involved in the game, and the spectator does not wish for the actual suffering of the contestant. He only enjoys the perfection of an iconography. It is not true that wrestling is a sadistic spectacle, it is only an intelligible spectacle. End quote. It's not that the audience wants to perpetuate the suffering of Scott Levy or Philip Jack Brooks. Rather, they want to see the annihilation or triumph of what both Raven and Punk as theatrical characters are iconographic of, and what the character's journey will be by performing violence. When a wrestler wins a wrestling match and the referee raises their hand high to signify victory to the audience, that is iconography for the demographic said wrestler represents. The appeal, then, as a wrestling fan, is the hope of witnessing some parts of your identity, your history, and fortitude not only recognized but championed by the promotion making the creative decisions. Yet when Punk declares that he will become a monster to, quote, fight the monsters of the world, he renders Raven subhuman while implicating himself. He promises to go to lengths that will call the morality of his character, thus those in the audience emotionally latching themselves onto Punk, into question. In wrestling terms, Punk promises he will turn heel to defeat the heel. The key word in the terms such as consensual violence is consensual. Sport, especially combat sport, is one of the only sectors within the social contract where violence is permissible. This is where I disagree with Barths in his argument that professional wrestling is only an intelligible spectacle, not a sadistic one. It's both. Punk's promo, and the wrestling match it's building toward, is legible precisely because the sadistic violence that'll ensue within kayfabe isn't permitted within the confines of the social contract. Punk's promise to turn heel presses into the audience's morbid desire for violence as catharsis. In fact, kayfabe is the closest the working class audience can get to feeling catharsis through another person's suffering, in this case the wrestler, without breaking said contract. When their iconography wins, it's a celebration of their demographic. When they lose, however, it's still a recognition of their sociopolitical struggle. In order to articulate violence, whether that be consensual or systemic, one has to witness it to metabolize it. The appeal of professional wrestling is partly the entertainment of sadism, partly that wrestlers themselves are vehicles in which a wrestling promotion employs as a tenor for social commentary. Additionally, wrestlers symbolize power for demographics lacking representation. It's one of the only social spheres where both the performer and the audience can publicly derive pleasure or catharsis from violence. Because wrestlers draw from their biographical and socioeconomic backgrounds, the only limitations in what story can be told or shown in professional wrestling is how far they're willing to go, which lines between fiction and reality they're willing to blur. In the case of Punk, the further he escalates the emotional stakes, the more difficult it is to parse what feels real in kayfabe and what's technically real outside of it.